This video will look at English Language Unit 2 and we're looking at question A3. To answer the next question, you will need to refer to both texts. A3. Compare and contrast what the two writers say about Johann Joubert. You must make it clear from which text you get your information. Okay, so this question, the A3 question, will ask you to look at both texts. And this means that you need to summarise information from both texts and look for any similarities. This wants you to look for differences in point of view. And when it looks at Johann Joubert, it's to keep focused on the subject of the question. Again, this is a 10-mark question, and it would be advisable for you to spend 15 minutes on this particular question. It also tells you in italics that you must make it clear from which text you get your information from. Now, I must stress how important that point is. WJC have said in the past that unless you make it very explicit and name the text that you're referring to, then you're not going to be credited. So you need to say, in text A it says this, and in text B it says that. Okay, so you need to make it very explicit. You must, as it says there, clearly reference the text as you make each point. And a good tip is to use the writer's name. So Thompson says, and Collins suggests. It would be a good idea now to pause the video and read through the information that you have in the separate resource material. And again, for your reference, this is the other article that is being explored in this particular question. Okay, so how do we answer this particular type of question? You need to find the pieces of the text that are relevant to the question, and in this case, the sections related to Johann Joubert. So you're going to have to begin with doing some skimming and scanning to find the information. So look at the focus of the question and then make sure then you focus in on that in the actual articles. So think about the word compare, which means similar, and contrast, which means different. And the way that you would answer this question is through the use of connectives. So if we think about our connectives for comparison, we're looking at words such as similarly, as with, in the same way, compared with, likewise, equally, okay? And in contrast, we're looking at however, on the other hand, although, despite, whereas, alternatively, instead, and although. And remember that key bit of information from WJC, which is to make it very clear which text you're referring to by using the writer's name. Let's look at a simple approach. Thompson tells us that Joubert is the man who's in charge of the park. She also says he's a vet who looks after the animals. Collins also says he is a resident vet, but also says he is a wildlife manager and is in charge of the armed unit, which makes it sound as if he's involved in more things. Both texts tell us he's involved with the Born Free Foundation and looks after lions. Collins says they've been traumatised and Thompson says they've been mistreated, so they both make Joubert sound like a good, caring man who helps the animals. Now that may seem like quite a formulaic approach, but it's actually a very successful answer. So you've got the references to the writers' names, you've got points that are made, evidence to support the points. We also have the use of key connectives as well, or signposting, so both texts, both, Thompson says, Collins says. So that's how to do a very sort of successful answer. So what you ought to do now is to pause the video and move through the rest of the extract, or the comparison of the text rather, and pick out perhaps 4 or 5 other key points. And remember to include both comparison, so what's similar, and contrast. And the way that you do that is through the use of connectives. So the previous slide showed you a simplistic approach that perhaps would move you into a C grade, and then to access those much higher grades, here's an example of how to do that. Both texts speak of Joubert with respect and admiration, and we see his commitment to the animals in each article. Thompson makes much of Jaubert's dedication to conversation, saying it is his watchword, and that he sees education of future generations as crucial, making him sound like a crusader for animals' rights. However, Collins makes him seem like a more hands-on action man, telling us that he acts as a resident vet, wildlife manager, and runs the armed unit. Both articles show his compassion for big cats by discussing his role with the Born Free Foundation. He is dedicated to helping animals who have been mistreated and abandoned and abused. Collins seems to suggest that Jaubert plays down any danger that he faces by... Okay, so you can see this as a more sophisticated example. It goes into more detail. It's quite confident in its style. Again, you've got the use of different types of quotations. So we've got shorter quotations, the use of point evidence explanation. We've also got the references to the writers' names, the use of connectives all the way through. And I suppose what you do have as well is more inference, more sort of understanding of the text and the effect that it has. So, what you should do now is try to use this more sophisticated model to finish the answer, and you shouldn't panic at this point because either response is valid and will get you marks if you extend it and do it properly. And again, here we have the marking criteria. So if we look at marks 5 to 7, which is our seen above, so you need to clearly identify the text and writers, a range of valid points, clearly and appropriate to collate material, so that's a skill that you're actually using here with collating information from different texts, and better answers should make comparisons and cross-references. And then to move into AA star, you clearly identify the writer's text, a wide range of valid points, organising the answer clearly and appropriately to collate material, a precise cross-referencing rather than general. It's precise for the AA star. It should be clear and coherent and be purposeful in its selection. So if you're able to have a go at this at home, what you can then do is use this to identify whether you picked up on the same things that WJEC thought you ought to be. And at this point you should pause the video and have a look at this particular exemplar. And finally, on this last slide, we have an example of a more sophisticated, higher tier answer that is going to be at an AA star grade. Okay, so in the text, so it's naming it, it's signposting. In the article Lion King, we've got the use of quotations, it's sustained, we're using those connectives to compare and contrast, and it's tracking through, and it's a very sort of systematic approach, which is going to be a useful approach for you in your exam.